Hola and welcome to episode number 3 of Viva Spanish, the podcast. And today's episode is a unique one for the 3 that we've done so far because I have a guest with me. Now, I've been talking about having people on, and Matt is the first Viva Spanish, the podcast guest. Now, he is somebody that I have known for 20 many years as we went to school together. We started at secondary school together. We were in a few classes, played some football together. We were just discussing off camera now how we went to Tossa de Mar together in year 9 on a water sports trip, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, here he is, a Viva Spanish student. Back then, there was not a cat in hell's chance that the 2 of us would ever consider crossing paths many years later with me teaching him how to speak Spanish, yet here we are. So Matt, what can you tell us about you, please?
Hola, me llamo Matt, tengo 38 años, vivo en Nottingham con mi novia Steph y nuestras 2 hijas, Ellie y Rosie, tienen 6 y 2 años. También tenemos un perro llamado Otis, tiene 11 meses.
Perfecto, sí.
Me encanta el fútbol y mi equipo favorito es Nottingham Forest. Para el trabajo soy conductor de tren y he estado
Aprendiendo, sí.
Aprendiendo español con Lee desde octubre. Me gusta mucho.
Muy bien, sí, señor. Well done. So I know that you prepared that before coming on. It wasn't all off the cuff, but you said that you were very honest about it. You didn't use any Google Translate. You just went for what you knew. And these are familiar bits to you, aren't they? Because, I mean, as you'll attest to as we go through the podcast, you'll be talking a little bit about how the lessons are structured, the types of things we do. So very good. So can you summarize in English for anybody that might not have been able to follow all of that information, what you have told us?
Yeah, so pretty much said, hello, my name's Matt. I'm 38 years old. I live in Nottingham with my girlfriend Steph. We have 2 daughters, Ellie and Rosie, who are 6 and 2 years old. Also, we have a dog called Otis, who's 11 months.
What you do for a living?
Oh, yeah. So I said I was a train driver. I love football, support Nottingham Forest, and that I've been having lessons with you since October, and I like it a lot.
Very good. Yeah, get that in. Get that bit in. You like it a lot. No, definitely. Very, very good. So the only thing I'm going to do what I do in the lessons, and I'm going to tweak a couple of little bits. 38 años for 38. And the other bit was the double L of se llama or llamado for the dog. Llamado Otis. But other than that, perfecto. So what can you remember from when we were back at school?
Not a lot. Especially with
the trauma.
Do you know what? For me, school was having a laugh with my friends. Messing about, not doing any work, and just having a good time. Really, I liked school. I like going to school to be social, but yeah, I certainly didn't like learning.
No, and obviously the 2 of us having a similar school experience, at least secondary school experience. I think it's fair for us to say that language lessons weren't particularly a priority to us back then.
No, I'd say so. I did French. And to be honest, that's the lesson I dossed in the most. Messed about the whole time, didn't learn anything. I wasn't interested at all, really, in learning.
Do you think that's down to it being the language itself, the stage that you were in life? The style of the lesson, the teacher? What do you put it down to?
It's probably a lot to do with me and who I was. But yeah, just not really having an interest either. Like you say, the lessons probably were boring or not engaging. So the thing that I liked doing was playing up, really.
At least you're honest about this. So when did that, in Spanish they say cambiar el chip, like literally to change the chip, as in microchip. So when did you cambiar el chip and all of a sudden gain that interest in learning a foreign language? Was it any language would do for you, or was it Spanish for a particular reason?
Yeah, so for me, it probably was, I always wanted to learn, well, not always, since being an adult, I wanted to learn Spanish purely because the amount of times I've been to Spain and will go to Spain in the future. And I just find it rude that when we go to Spain, I don't know what the percentage of British people have been to Spain on holiday. It's going to be pretty high. But then what's the percentage of them that could even string one sentence together? I'm going to say pretty low. So I would
tend to agree.
I find it quite rude that we go there and don't really speak the language. Yes, if they were to come here, they're sort of expected to know the
Absolutely.
language.
Absolutely. It's double standards ultimately, isn't it? It's definitely a case of double standards.
So that's pretty much the reason why I wanted to do it, and just to do something in my spare time as well. Not that I get a lot of spare time, so I'm either working or...
Well, that's it. So, I mean, obviously we squeeze our lessons in around your shifts. So but it works out quite nicely because we aim for that hour of class per week. And I know you support your lessons with Duolingo. We'll talk about that in a minute. So was that ultimately your feeling when you went to Spain and you couldn't even perhaps order the drink that you wanted or ask how much the thing was? Was it just rudeness, or was there ever an occasion where you thought, you know what, I wish I could just explain the way that I feel or explain a point that I need to get across?
Do you know what? I remember actually when I thought, do you know what, I want to start learning. I was on a bus and I wanted to listen to people's conversations. And that's
so pure
nosiness.
I was just
thinking, because they speak so fast, and I was just like, I'd love to know what they were saying. Like, yeah, definitely being nosy. But yeah, also obviously being able to just something simple like order something at a restaurant, ask for help, or just basic, I don't know, politeness, really.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what I said previously in the first podcast about being able to represent yourself as you wish to being able to represent who you are, because we're not rude people. Generally speaking, people aren't rude, and if you aren't able to express that politeness, then you come across as being something that you're not. So how did you hear about classes with Viva Spanish?
So yeah, just through your social media, really. And I can't remember exactly when, but I was doing Spanish lessons. I say doing them, it was very brief. And then I gave up. And then I must have, your classes must have popped up all over social media.
Yeah, I did share them quite heavily at the beginning. I've eased
off
a little bit now.
But I thought, you know what? Obviously, we know each other. And what I found hard when I was doing the Spanish lessons before with a native Spanish guy living in Spain, when it came to me not understanding something and needing to speak in English, that's where our problem was. So with you, I know you, we will have good banter, and we'll be able to obviously understand each other, and then it just felt it would make it easier doing it with
it's something to fall back on. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And it's something to fall back on if the Spanish fails, which it's bound to because of the stage of your Spanish journey that you're on at this moment. Then we've got that comfort blanket of being able to revert back to English, explain what needs to be explained, and then flick back into Spanish again. Yeah. So how do the lessons that we share compare to the lessons that you've shared previously? So you mentioned the breakdown in language. Is the structure similar?
No. So yours feels more like engaging, a bit more fun. Yeah, and whereas his was a bit more textbook sort of lessons, which was, it was like, what, obviously I think we've spoke before in our lessons, we go back to some of the things that he taught me, especially when we first started out, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So things did stick, but I just feel
Absolutely, yeah.
it was probably not right for me to keep
And
you engaged, really.
I think that's the point, isn't it? So it's apples and oranges at the end of the day. You know, some people will do a lesson with Viva Spanish and be like, I just don't get enough of the grammar. I need to understand more about why these things are in place and what they're for and the meaning of that que. And I always tell people about the que that you call the angry que. I share that with lots of people nowadays because those of you that have had class with me previously and they're listening, you'll know that I like to put a role play towards the end of the lesson to show the grammar structure or the element of the language that we've been practicing into a real context so we can follow it through in a conversation. And often I'll put things like que no, which is a very typical Spanish response, which no would be fine, no would suffice in this answer, but they'll say que no. And you were the one that baptized this K as the angry K. So if you didn't know why it was there, you put it down to the fact that someone was angry when they're saying it. Yeah,
definitely.
very good. So
I think,
yeah, you
sorry,
go ahead.
I think I remember saying when I had my lessons with the other guy, I used to come away with such a headache. I used to dread my next lesson, even though I wanted to do it. I was paying to do it. I used to say to Steph, I was like, oh, I really don't want to do this lesson. My head's fried. I don't get it. But whenever I come away from a lesson with you, I'm always like, oh yeah, that was really good. And I'm sort of like buzzing to do the next one. And then I'll go on like massive streaks of like learning my Duolingo and all that, because I do enjoy doing it. Whereas before I was like, I'm gonna keep doing it and keep paying, but I don't want to do this and I don't want to pay to do it.
Yeah, and it's a contradiction at that point, isn't it? You need to reevaluate, which is what you did, and you stepped away from that. And then how many months was it between your previous teacher and me?
Ooh, I don't know. I think it was a good while. I'll say 7-8 months, maybe. I'm
Wow.
sure it was.
Well,
I started with. I think was with him during COVID. So maybe like a year. Not quite. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, like you said, you picked up on the fact that, there were things that definitely stuck from your previous teachers. So, I mean, it's not, nobody's digging anyone out. No one's saying that anyone did a bad job. The foundations were there, which I'm grateful for, because it meant that we weren't starting from scratch. And thankfully, he did do a good job and he did teach you the right things. And what we spoke about at the beginning of our journey together matched up with what he'd spoken with you about too. The problem would have been if he taught you something contradictory.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Duolingo. We like to have a little bit of a joke about Duolingo, particularly carro. Carro is the first one that crops up because in one of my first lessons, I teach the word car as coche. And people always say to me, isn't car carro? And I'm like, here we go. You use Duolingo, don't you? And I was like, yeah, it says carro. And they tend to use Latin American Spanish more so than Spain Spanish. But that's okay. And people say, is it all right to use Duolingo? Because you told me that they don't use that word in Spain. Carro in Spain is a shopping trolley. And so a little bit different. And I say, yes, it's absolutely worth it, because for every minute you choose to spend your time away from the classroom in Spanish is a well-spent minute. Now, if you end up learning 100 words and let's say 3 of them are Latin, you've learned 97 good words. So it's definitely worth doing. So what is it about Duolingo that keeps you going back to that?
I like to try and just complete things. So I'm like determined to do a unit in however many days it is to do a unit, especially with like on my lunch breaks and things like that. And it's just quite engaging as well. So It's like fun, I guess. It's just nice to be able to piece things together. And then obviously there's things that we talk about that pop up. And I think there's been a few times where we've had a lesson and then literally the next unit's been the same as what we've done on Duolingo as well. So
it's always a happy coincidence at that point. Yeah, absolutely. So thinking back to when you began your Spanish lessons as an adult, like you've said, what were the barriers? How old were you when you started? Because you said ever since being an adult, you had an interest in learning Spanish, but then you probably took it up at into your 30s. So there was a long period of time where you just didn't do it. What was stopping you?
I don't know. I think it's just that thing of jumping into the unknown. But yeah, I have always wanted to do it and never went for it. And then it was Steph that was like, just go for it. Why don't you just do it? And then she sort of pushed me into doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a what is there to lose kind of scenario associated with it, because, you know, all right, it'll cost you the however much money the first lesson costs. You realize you don't like it, you stop, you've lost you however much. However, what you stand to gain is massive.
Yeah, definitely. It's just one of them things, isn't it? I think you should go for it if you've got an interest, instead of like going, oh no. I think maybe the barrier in your mind is your school days, thinking, well, I hated doing that at school. Why am I going to put myself through this again? But then,
yeah, and that's a fair comment. That's something that, to be genuinely, I hadn't considered that. Like, it was almost a very light form, but torture at school.
Yeah.
And then why would I all of a sudden not only choose to put myself through it again, but pay for the pleasure of putting myself through it all over again? So the apprehensions that you might have had with me as a teacher for you, with our background, our friendship over the years, was there anything that stood out and made you think twice about it, or was it easier, do you think, at that point?
Definitely easier. Like, I was fully committed and wanted to do it. And I think a lot, well, I'd say 100% of that is because it was you. That is why I've chosen you to be my tutor. We know each other. We have a good rapport, and I think that just makes it a bit easier for me anyway.
And it's always nice because I teach definitely two off the top of my head, you and Joey, and obviously you know Joey as well from our school days. And I think they're possibly, sorry, whoever I'm forgetting, I think I've got one more that I used to know from elsewhere. But yeah, it's always nice because we know what we're getting into with each other. You know that, you know, it's going to be chilled out. I'm not going to be telling people off. I'm not going to be saying, what, you didn't do your homework? I can't believe it. How are you ever going to make any progress? It's just not like that. It's, look, all right, it's going to help you if you can do your homework. You know, it's when you need to be corrected. I've got no problems with correcting you, but at the same time, I am a praise giver, and that is a supportive element for the students that I have. But it's only when it's due. You know, I only give the credit where it's due. I'm not just going to give it for nothing, because neither of us are going to get anywhere by either you feeling you're superior to where you are, or me building you up to think that even maybe I'm bigging myself up too much, that I'm doing a better job with you than is real. So we've mentioned Duolingo. Now, we've spoken previously about the different things that you do away from the class to support the lessons. Aside from the homework that I set, tell everybody a little bit about the homework that I set, because I tend to give a job per week of X, Y, or Z. What can you tell the people about that?
So usually with the homework, it's basically based on whatever lesson we've done that day. So, for example, our last lesson was directions, and then you sent me the homework to direct you to a place, and I did it from my house to 3 different places, and then you had to like decipher where I was going, whether it was right or wrong.
That's it. So, put it back into the English to make sure that your instructions have been as you'd hoped they were. So now I can get to the park from your house, the kids' school from your house, and also the shop. So when I come knocking on your door randomly, I'm going to feel like it's all really familiar.
It's like I say, to go to the shop for me. Cooked it to the shop for us, good.
Yeah, you'll give me a shopping list.
Or pick the kids up.
I'll take him out for the afternoon.
There you go. You saw it. We've got a new babysitter.
Yeah. So obviously, some of the other homeworks I like to set have been based around you producing questions ready for the following lesson. And
Yeah.
it could be, let's say, for example, we go back to the present continuous, and we've looked at the present continuous. We've discussed how to structure sentences in that way. And then the homework, instead of it always being, could you write me 3 sentences? It might be, could you prepare 3 questions using the present continuous? And I feel it has a lot of value, because not only are you practicing the same structure again for your homework, but it provokes more of the same structure again in the following lesson in a way that you've chosen.
Yeah.
So you've then dictated where that conversation goes, and it's on topics that interest you. And I mean, I know obviously people will have gathered very quickly that we're both into our football, and we've had lots of football discussions, but it's not been we're learning football. It's been we're talking Spanish, we're using the structures that we've learned together, and now we're talking about things that interest you.
Yeah, so I think that's what, again, with our lessons, we're talking about things that we would talk about to somebody in a pub, or, you know, one of your mates or whatever. We're not going to be talking about, I don't know, just something that has no interest or no relevance.
Yeah, something that you might find in a
My
textbook.
life. Yeah. So that's
absolutely
obviously helps as well.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know that one of the other things aside from homework that you do is you are a live commentator.
I am, yeah. I can basically, when I get on my train, I will do my day, speak my day where I'm going in Spanish.
Do you do that out loud?
Do I do it out loud? I don't know. I might do. People probably will hear me in the back.
You accidentally leave your microphone on. Everyone's expecting the next station is in English, and you're there telling them all in Spanish.
But yeah, I do that often. But I'm sort of at a stage where it's the same every day, really. So me, I don't know, saying I'm approaching a red signal or putting the key in or going faster, that's like nothing really changes now. So I probably need to start commentating more parts of my day.
That's it. So, I mean, I remember mentioning in the previous podcast about walking down the street and being able to say, oh, it's a car. Oh, it's a red car. Oh, it's a fast red car, you know, and you build that up, and oh, that fast red car is going to crash, bang. Oh, and then I go home and I'm like, oh no, how do you say crash in Spanish? Because I wouldn't have known. And then that's how you extend it. But that repetition has been so good for you. Because now I am absolutely certain that you will know, having done your day job for hundreds of days since we've begun our Spanish lessons together, you now know the word for key. And it cropped up the other day, didn't it? You knew a word because of your train driver technical vocabulary.
It was,
You were doing the directions, like you said, and semáforo came up, and you're like, is that traffic light? And I was like, good lad, like, where did you pull that one from? I was expecting to need to teach you that. And you're like, oh no, what was it? Semaphore.
Semaphore is the signal. So yeah.
There you go. Viva Spaniards. You're not just learning Spanish, you're getting some English words as well. And then this is one of the things that I love about what I'm doing now, because I'm meeting people that can teach me so much. I'm learning so much with people like yourself. Just people, I mean, so many interesting people. I go from meeting mums and dads and babysitters at play groups that have really interesting backstories that I get chatting away to. I'm meeting, you know, the other day I met a child, and he's literally 2 years old. He can do all the numbers to 1,000 in English.
Nah.
Honestly.
Wow.
Honestly. And we were at this play group, and there were candles for a play cake, and he was rearranging them into 3-digit numbers and saying them. I was like, goodness me. Now, I met this child, I think I've done 5 sessions with him now. And since then, we've worked a lot on numbers. And his dad said he just loves numbers. He just gets excited by them. And whenever he sees a number, he shouts it out. So we did some work on Spanish, and now he's got numbers to 100 in Spanish already.
Wow.
He's
a genius. He's a genius.
I said that. I was like, do you remember Channel 4's Child Genius? I was like, he's going to be on there.
Oh my, that's impressive, to be fair.
It is, definitely. What about social media? Now, we haven't had this conversation previously. I know that I've got Joey in particular follows a few pages on social media in Spanish. Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, there's a I think you told me about some football account on Twitter, which I
Yeah,
definitely
Mr.
follow.
Chips, I think it
That's who it is.
is.
So I try, and when I see one of his tweets pop up, I sort of try my hardest to translate it back, but it's still, some of it's a bit hard for me, I think, at the moment.
And you mentioned, because Forrest signed the Costa Rican goalkeeper, isn't he?
Navas.
Keylor Navas. Yeah, he was Real Madrid goalkeeper for a period of time. And you followed him on Twitter, is that right?
Yeah. So yeah, Instagram, and yeah, he was posting a lot in Spanish, which I did understand. So it's quite nice.
What sort of percentage of? I mean, you can only imagine, with all respect to football people out there. I can't imagine they're tweeting about particularly technical vocabulary in areas that we're not familiar. And what percentage of his tweets would you, or his posts, would you say you understood?
I'd say percentage-wise, 75-80% easily, if not more, because I think, like we say in lessons when we're reading the role plays, and then you ask me what it is in English, you can sort of piece the missing parts together to understand what it is.
That's it. And that's exactly that skill of deduction, that skill of being able to say, okay, well, if that means that and that means that, it must be that the middle bit logically turns out to be X, Y, or Z. And you've got a good guess.
It was like with that. Do you remember the Villa review that we're staying in this summer? And I was buzzing. So it's a good paragraph, wasn't it? And I was like, I know this. I can read all this. Well,
that's right. So to give a little bit of context, Matt's going on holiday in the summer to Spain. Where is it you're going again? Mallorca, was it?
Sitges, just outside
that's it. So I'm Barcelona. Yes, I'm confusing you with another person that's going to Mallorca. But you're renting a villa and you've done it privately?
Yes. Yeah, I was reading the reviews, and one of them happened to be in Spanish.
Yeah, and I remember because I'm grateful to you, Matt, because you take what I say and you use it. What I mean by that is I tell all of my students the same thing. If you've got any doubts, if there's anything I can help you with Spanish or anything else, I can give it a go. Don't ask me to do DIY because I'm not very good. But I'll say, message me. What you can spend an hour looking for, I should be able to do in 10 seconds and get back to you with. So I tell some of my other students about getting screenshots from you and getting annoyed at Anna on Duolingo.
The amount of screenshots from Duolingo I must have sent you. I'm like, this is wrong. I
appreciate that. Yeah, and then I'll say, well, maybe not quite wrong. Maybe we're getting a bit muddled up. But again, I like to be able to help. And when you sent me that screenshot of the long paragraph of the review, and you're saying, I think I know what all of this means. Is it this, this, and this? And I was like, yes. And I, genuinely, I was reading that, and I gave Stacey a chance. Like, look at this. Like, he's really proud of himself, and he should be, because he's just a whole paragraph written by a native Spanish speaker about things that actually aren't that day to day, and he's understood it. And she was like, you must be doing really well. I was like, yeah, definitely.
I reckon I sent you that message at 5 a.m. as well. I'm sure it was really. I was laid in bed reading it, and I was like, "Oh my god, I know all this in Spanish."
All right, I'm gonna dig you out a little bit at this point, because I know that you had a crisis of confidence recently when it was a passenger, right, or somebody on a platform that was asking for somebody that spoke Spanish, and you bottled it.
I bottled it. Definitely did.
Why?
I don't know. I do know. It's because I had two other colleagues stood next to me. And I just thought, you know what? The easy option is to go, no, I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak Spanish.
Really slowly, really loudly.
Yeah. And I think all she wanted to know was, if I can remember, it was probably something like, is this the train to Nottingham? Which I 100% would have been able to understand. And 100% would have been able to answer her question and told her the right information. But yeah, I bottled it.
But the good thing is when you told me about that, I was like, do you regret not saying something? You're like, yeah, I should have. I should have just dived in. I should have just been confident enough in my ability, because what was the worst that could have happened?
Well, no, nothing. I would have just looked a bit
Exactly.
stupid, and we'd have got there in the end
But
anyway.
not even, because I can almost guarantee that you would have been able to do more for that lady than your colleagues would have.
Yeah.
So in the
I think
worst of
if
cases,
wasn't there, I would have probably, I'm not saying 100% would have gone for it, but I would have felt more confident doing it, just me and her speaking it. Yeah.
Well, it is a bit of all eyes on me at that point, isn't it? And I suppose what you stand to lose at that point is a little bit of respect is the wrong word, but they wouldn't have respected you any less. I'm sure they would have respected you more for having tried, but you would have felt a little bit embarrassed.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Yeah. Well, now next time, go for it. Jump in with both feet.
When I go to Spain in 3 weeks, I think it is now, I'm going all out. I'm doing it. So
and that's the last little point for us to discuss, really. So I've got literally in front of me that you're going away in a few weeks. And one of the great things about having one-to-one lessons is that you can dictate to me the content of the lessons that we share. So I always say, give me a couple of weeks notice, but I can put something together that's really going to help you in a specific context. So we've discussed so far, for example, activities that you might do while you're away. We've spoken about hotels. We've spoken about things at the beach. We've spoken about directions. So I've got some more lessons for you coming up about some of the problems that you might face.
Yeah.
So I've prepared some slides about, if I can recall, we've got the electricity being cut off, about arranging to collect the key and drop it off. And off the top of my head, I can't remember. I've got 3 more role plays as well to go with that, where we'll discuss the vocabulary. We'll see it in a sentence and we'll go from there. Oh, we did the car hire as well, didn't we?
Car hire,
the car hire. And how does that preparation of a handful of minutes, a couple of hours of practice leading up to a holiday like your trip to Barcelona, how does that change your attitude towards what's going to happen?
So it just makes you more aware, I guess. I'm ready because you know that these questions are probably going to get asked to you, or you need to ask these questions to the person that's stood in front of you. So it's just, and they're quite generic, and everything it's sort of a structure, isn't it? So it's just
something. Exactly. That's something that I've realized when I'm preparing these bits and pieces. Literally, waiters all around the world say the same things.
It's going to be the same.
Do you have a reservation? How many are there of you? Follow me.
Nothing changes.
What would you like to drink?
The only thing that changes is what you're picking off the menu.
Yeah,
that's it. The rest of the restaurant experience is the same everywhere you go. Yeah. So as long as you can nail them bits, then the little bits in the middle, which do change, like your food or your drink or whatever.
It's a little bit of a fill in the blanks exercise at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the old adage, prepare to fail, fail to prepare. So you're going in, relatively speaking, as prepared as you can be for the time that we've spent together and the learning that you've done. And how about your children then? So are you one of these dads that will be there elbowing your kid in the ribs saying, right, you say this, you have a go at this?
I'm gonna order for all of them. So
you can, my daddy speaks Spanish.
Yeah, they'll be so impressed. They're like, what are you saying? What's he talking about?
As in, you can turn and say, "Oh, I've ordered you broccoli flavored ice cream."
Yeah,
daddy.
Give it away.
That's it. No, I mean, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with the Viva Spaniards that listen to the podcast, because I really want people to see and to hear the kind of person that I'm working with, because we are just normal blokes that have day jobs, that go to work, go home, spend time with our families, enjoy the football. We're no different. And I think sometimes people get this impression of people that learn Spanish are this type of a person or are that type of a person. you obviously you have a full-time job, you know, you're doing 40 plus hours a week, I know, with your overtime, yet you still manage to squeeze an hour of Spanish in here or there. And genuinely, I am grateful to you, because if I didn't have people that were willing to bite the bullet, then I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be doing something that I enjoy so much, and I wouldn't get to learn from people like yourself. So thank you very much for what you do for me and for Viva Spanish, and putting the food on the table for my kids.
Yeah, no, honestly, and like I say, likewise, thank you as well, because it is quite daunting jumping in and learning another language, especially at being nearly 40 years old. Nearly 40 years old.
It's mad, isn't it? We met at 11.
But I just think I think if people are interested or want to do it, then just go for it. I think I really enjoy like working with you. Like, it's really relaxed, and I feel I learn better in a more relaxed way, rather than, you know, just going through books and this and that. It's not how I work best. So for me, like, doing it how we do it works perfect for me. So
I appreciate that.
Fully recommend to anyone listening who wants to take up Spanish. Contact Lee.
That's it. Your next class is free for that. Provided somebody signs up, you can have the next lessons for free. No, but you know, that's what I aim for. I want, and obviously the tagline that I've got is Viva Spanish, Spanish through context, not through textbooks. Spanish in context, not in textbooks. Because if I were to learn the language, or any language, and ultimately the way I did learn Spanish, it was through living it. So I try to recreate that situation as closely as we can in the time that we share together. So as much Spanish as possible, practical, real situations for you to experience as closely as you can from Nottingham.
Yeah.
You know, so no, I think you go ahead.
I say it's definitely how I work best for learning. I hate reading things. Like, I say to Steph that I can't read. I mean, I can read words, but I read them and I just don't take it in. So like reading books or anything, it's just like, I'll read one page and then totally forget what I've read. Whereas obviously we do things a bit differently, where it is a lot of practical, you know, role play and
that repetition element.
That helps 100%.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Matt, for coming on. I'm sure that people have enjoyed listening to you. And the catchphrase that I now end with, la próxima vez más y mejor.